Hi, I'm Richard. I'm the founder of Secret Source. So I've been running remote teams since about 2008. First, I used to run teams in India, and then in Gran Canaria. And we now provide teams that are based in Gran Canaria that work remotely for companies mainly in the UK. Um, One of the main things that our clients ask us when we start working with them is the we want your teams to feel like our own teams that are working in our office. So today I'm going to explain to you how you can make your remote team, whether it's your own team or whether it's sorry, Todd, can you accept people into the from the waiting room? Whether it's people from your own company or from an external company, so that they feel like they're in your own office. But the biggest thing that I want to take away from today is that running a remote team is not the same as running an in-house team. Okay, you have to do things differently. Meetings, interactions, relationships that sort of naturally happen in an office or environment don't automatically happen remotely. So there are certain things that you need to do, and today I'm going to explain what they are. So we're going to look at five things. We're going to look at how to build personal relationships, how to build psychological safety, how to set expectations, how to collaborate better, and then how to empower your remote team. So starting off with um, personal relationships. Before the pandemic, look, our team used to work in an office 4 days a week, 5 days a week. And when a new recruit would arrive, a new developer, they'd meet the team, they'd go for a coffee with their colleagues, they'd chat about whatever Game of Thrones or whatever was on TV at the time. They'd maybe go for a beer after work on their first day, and they'd get the bus home with someone else in the team. That just doesn't happen now. Okay. You're never going to create an office environment exactly the same with a remote team, but there are things that you can do to replicate the really good aspects of working in an office. And the first one is you need to make it clear that it's okay to have small talk, right? It's okay to chat about non-work things. It's actually good to do it. So think about it. When you're in the office, say you're on the first floor, you've got a meeting upstairs. 5 minutes before the meeting, you grab the person next to you, you wander upstairs. While you're wandering up, you chat about the TV, you chat about the football or whatever. You have your meeting, and then after the meeting, you might go for a coffee, chat about something else. Um, Now, those interactions are super important for building personal relationships, and when you're working remotely, they tend not to happen. Remote workers are so pressured to be productive the whole time that they don't have these non-work chats. As a remote worker, I've never just called up someone on Zoom midway through the day and said, "Oh, did you see the football result last night?" It just doesn't happen. So you need to encourage it in your team because it's really important to build those personal relationships. Now, so what we do in our team is we have stand-ups every morning, 15-minute calls every morning for every team, so that they can uh, get an update of what's going on, so everyone knows what the rest of the team is doing. Now, at the start of that, the Scrum Master or the project manager of that team will sort of ask the rest of the team, "How's it going? What did you watch on TV last night? Did your football team win, or whatever?" They'll model it. They'll show that it's okay to do it. Um, and then after the and so that the team understand that it's okay to have small talk. I know that some companies they like to have their meetings for work time only. Then this is fine. They say 9 to 9:30. We've got a meeting about whatever strategy, and we're gonna focus on these six things, and we're gonna get them done in that time. So what those companies can do is they create a buffer, a 10-minute buffer before the meeting and a 10-minute buffer after the meeting, and they tell their teams, right, turn up 10 minutes before and then chat with each other. Have the small talk that you want to. Then we'll focus on the meeting for 10 minutes, and then afterwards you can chat with your friends. Okay, this is really important, and it's really important to build those personal relationships. Rachel's now going to explain a couple more ideas that we've got.
Yeah, so the next is improving your onboarding. So onboarding is really important for remote teams. It's that first chance to build a relationship with them. And I know it seems obvious, but you'd be surprised how many companies onboard new employees without really speaking to them. Now, we have quite an intensive onboarding process that not only helps new people learn about the company, but we make sure that we schedule meetings with all the important people too. So, for example, I like to welcome all the new recruits to the company with a short meeting to meet them and explain my role and kind of the overall mission of the company. And they'll also meet our CTO as well, so that he can meet them and get to know them a little bit better. So the other thing you can do, and this is small, but is create space for non-work chat. So we use Slack for team communication, and we have channels in there. We've got one for random stuff where people can share interesting articles or a particularly good meme. And we also have a random coffee channel as well. So people can choose to join this. And we use an application that automatically pairs people every week to have a coffee, basically. They set aside 50 minutes and have an online chat as well, just to meet other people in the company. And finally, and obviously this isn't remote, but if you can, try to meet in person at least once a year. This goes a long way to building personal relationships. We try to get our clients to visit us at least once a year, and not so hard to persuade them to come to Gran Canaria. But, you know, they get together with the team, they'll go out for dinner, and you can also use it as time to kind of doing a deep dive on planning or looking at overall strategy as well. So yeah, doing that at least once a year we find is really important.
Okay, so next thing I want to talk about is psychological safety. So if you don't know what psychological safety is, it's basically the feeling you get when you feel safe in a group situation. Feel safe to ask questions, give suggestions, express an opinion. So the definition here is a person feels psychological safety, feels psychologically safe when they're in a group and they feel included in the group, safe to learn in that group, safe to contribute, and safe to challenge the status quo, all without fear of being embarrassed, marginalized, or punished in some way. Now, the way I like to describe it for people that don't know what it is it's how I didn't feel at school. So I was in a class of whatever, 25 kids, and I never wanted to put my hand up. Didn't want to put my hand up because I was afraid that the teacher might say, that's a silly question, or someone else in the class might sting it, or that I hadn't been listening properly and they'd actually answered the question 5 minutes before. So I didn't feel safe. Look, you all know what it's like. You're on a Zoom call of 50 people and they say at the end, right, anyone got any questions? Nobody says anything because they don't feel safe doing it. Okay. So in Google, they did can you advance the slide, Todd? So Google did why is psychological safety important? Well, Google did a big study about in 2012, actually, where they were looking for what the characteristics of their perfect teams. And they found that their highest performing teams had psychological safety. Okay, they felt safe, they collaborated more, they innovated better, and they performed better. And also, other studies have found that psychological safety also improves team happiness. Okay, teams that feel safe tend to be happier. So it's essential that any team, whether it's in your office or remotely, feels safe. So what the Google discovered was that when they looked at these teams, they're high performing teams, what mattered was less about who was on the team, whether they were the sort of the most intelligent, the most experienced, but more about how the team interacted. They found that in the most successful teams, people talked about the same amount. So I'm going to read directly here from what they said in their report. As long as everyone got a chance to talk, the team did well. But if only one person or a small group spoke all the time, the collective intelligence of the whole team declined. So if the team didn't feel safe, the whole collective intelligence of the whole team was reduced. Okay, but building psychological safety in teams is difficult. It's difficult. You need to actively work on it, right? Okay, admittedly, some teams get 4 people together and they feel safe and it's great and they work really well from the beginning. But sometimes and a lot of the time, especially remotely, Teams don't feel safe, and you have to work on it. And how do you do that remotely? So I'm going to tell you a little story. About 5 years ago, a client came to us, a potential client, and they said, "Look, we need a team of 5 developers. Okay, but we're a little different. We're really agile, our team, and we love collaborating. We love brainstorming. We love chatting the whole time and getting the ideas from the developers. So they need to speak great English, and they need to be open to this very open, collaborative environment." So we interviewed a lot of people, and one of the developers we interviewed was amazing, really amazing CV in the tests, in the pair programming. They excelled, but they were super shy. Okay, and they didn't really speak much. So we were toying, would this person be a good person on the team? Then we realized, yeah, it's our responsibility to help that person feel safe, to help them come out of their shell and contribute to the team. So we looked at a couple of things. So they traditionally, this team, their retros were just a free for all. Right, what's going on? Tell us about what you thought about the sprint type thing, and everyone just pitched in and said their things. That didn't really work for this developer, even for other developers on the team. So we changed things a bit, and we introduced another way of contributing. So instead of speaking, we said, look, you can write down your answers. We used Metro Retro as a tool, and they wrote down their answers on the computer to contribute. We then found, well, what would be even better was if they got the questions beforehand, so like an hour beforehand. So it gave them time to think about it. They felt safer. They didn't feel so pressured at the moment to answer. And so they wrote their answers for the retro an hour before. And then we realized maybe we need to make the questions easier. And so, well, not easier, sort of less ambiguous. So instead of things like, well, how was the retro? We'd say, name one thing that you think went well this sprint. And what we found was that as we worked on helping these people feel safe, they contributed more. They felt safe. So what I'm trying to say is that even if someone doesn't feel safe in a team at the beginning, there are things that you can do to build their feeling of safety, and so that they can contribute as much as an extrovert who has no fear when coming into sort of a new team. But how do you do this, especially in remote teams? So we have 3 steps. Okay, the first one is to educate. Everyone in your team needs to know what psychological safety is, and they need to know its importance, and they need to know that it's their role in the psychological safety of others. Okay, they need to know that it's the safety of others, how others feel, is also their responsibility. So we include it in our onboarding. We run workshops, and it's part of our day-to-day language. So we reinforce it all the time. But if you're a leader of a remote team, you need to know about it, and you need to know how to build it. Okay, the psychological safety of your remote team, your remote employees, is not just their responsibility. You play a massive part in it too. Okay, next thing, build personal relationships. It's a lot easier to ask questions to someone you know than to a complete stranger. So dedicate time to that non-work chat. And thirdly, monitor it. Teams change. Okay, so it's important to keep an eye on how individuals are feeling. A person who feels safe in a team can lose that feeling of safety when a new member joins that team. So you need to keep checking that everyone feels safe. At Secret Sauce, we do this in our one-to-ones, but if you're managing a remote team, if you're managing a remote employee, you can see it. If they start contributing less, they start being less active, that's often a sign that they don't feel safe in that team. And here are a few sort of practical examples, just reinforcing what I've just said. Provide different ways for people to contribute. So if people don't feel happy speaking out, give them a way to contribute by writing. Make questions easier to answer. Not easier to answer, less ambiguous, so they feel less less pressure about making mistakes. Okay. It's easier to speak in smaller groups. You know what it's like. On a big Zoom call of 50 people, you won't speak out, but in a group of 3 or 4, you're more likely to contribute. So breakout rooms are a really good idea. And finally, any way that you can get information anonymously is fantastic. So polls are a really good way of getting opinions from your team. But probably the most important thing is you've got to realize that everybody is different. Okay, you shouldn't create rules for everybody. You shouldn't create processes that apply to everybody. Everybody's different. Every team is different. Just be aware of it and adapt what you do for that person or that team. I'm going to hand back to Rachel to talk about how to set expectations.
Yep. Okay, thanks. So yeah, setting clear expectations is really important. You know, when you have a remote team, it can be easy to start micromanaging and worrying what your team's doing if you can't see them working. But setting clear expectations is going to really help with that. You know, so in an office, you can check with your teammates or have a quick meeting, and it's easy for everyone to stay aligned on what the priority is and what different people should be doing. So when you have a remote team that doesn't communicate enough, it's easier for those expectations to diverge. And we've seen it 100 times where a developer, for example, with all the best intentions, does what they think is best for the project, only to find out that their idea is different to that of the client. So how can we keep expectations and goals aligned remotely? So the first thing is to regularly meet. So as Richard said, all of our teams have a daily stand-up, usually in the morning, to check in and see what people are working on and clear any blockers. And it's also a nice opportunity to have a little chat and to actually see your colleagues' faces. So they're only short, normally about 15 minutes, but a great way to keep everyone aligned. And we also hold regular retrospective meetings. So these are meetings where we talk about how we're working together and what can be improved. And this is also a great way to increase psychological safety, as Richard said, having this space where people can share feedback. And finally, it's really important to share kind of longer term strategic and company goals. So giving your team that wider context is going to help them understand what they're working towards and make them feel more connected to the company. And that's going to help in their day-to-day work as well. And so the second thing that we do that really helps keep teams aligned and helps them understand what is important to their client is to set a definition of success. So this isn't deliver X project by X date for X budget. It's much more nuanced than that. It's understanding what success looks like for the client and a way of understanding what's important to them. So let me give you an example. So imagine a client said to the team, okay, here's some designs and specifications, and I want you to deliver this by July the 1st. So seems pretty clear, but actually if you dig a little deeper and understand why it needs to be delivered by July the 1st, that's going to really help. So let's imagine that we go back to the client and say, okay, help me understand why you need it by July 1st. And they give you two answers. So one could be, okay, I need an app that I can present at this conference on July the 1st to 1,000 people, and I want to generate some interest. Or it could be, Success for me is an app that I can give to 100 people on July the 1st to test so I can start getting feedback. So do you see the difference? So if the team knew the first definition, then they can work to get these workflows finished in plenty of time so that the client can practice a presentation. And if it's the second, then you're going to focus on the core functionality so that users can actually get their hands on the app and start testing it. So they're subtle but really important differences. And so, like I say, understanding what's important to the client is going to make prioritization and working a lot easier. And so another thing that you might see when you're researching how to work with a remote team is be intentional about communication. And what does this mean? Well, it means that you have to make a conscious effort to communicate effectively and clearly. So again, when you're remote, you're not going to be having those little chats by the coffee machine where you can check what someone's doing or ask a quick question. So you need to make sure that your team gets the information that they need, because the way teams in offices get information is not the same as a remote team. So what can you do? So again, back to meetings, create a meeting schedule with clear expectations for each meeting. And if you're just starting with a remote team, then I would suggest starting with too many meetings rather than not enough. At least once a week, but daily is better. And I know that everyone's always looking for ways to cut meetings, but it's so important to make sure that you're communicating enough with your team, and it's going to save you time in the long run, I promise. And then finally, just defining how you're going to communicate as well. So Slack or Teams chat is great for quick questions, but make sure that people know that they should email important information, or maybe use a project management tool to keep all of project information in one place. Whatever it is, make sure it's clear. And then, if needed, have an emergency channel, and maybe that's Slack or phone numbers if you need to get hold of someone kind of when needed as well.
Okay, so how do you improve collaboration with a remote team? So collaboration's when a team works together for a common goal. Now, when we started Secret Sauce 8 years ago, we thought the secret to collaboration, the secret to reaching the goals of our client, was to not bother them too much. Okay. At the time, 8 years ago, the general opinion about outsourcing was that your outsourcing team was here, your client was here. Client would send over the requirements with very detailed, with all the designs. The outsourcing team would get on with doing that work, test it, finish it, and then give it back. And the least amount of time you could bother that client to take them away from their core work, the better. Okay. Many companies still work like this. They write their requirements documents, they send it out to 10 companies, one of them gets chosen, they then give it to them, leave them, and then get it back. It sort of works. It sort of works for some companies. It works for sort of simple projects. But if you've got more complex work, more sort of knowledge-based work, it really requires teams working together to find the best solutions together. If you want to harness the collective intelligence of your remote team and your team that are working in your office, then they need to meet. Okay, so how do you collaborate with a remote team in the same way that you would with a very close team in the office? I think the first thing you need to point out is it's not the same. You can't replicate that intense working relationship that you have when working in a small room with lots of people, but you can get really close. Okay, first thing you need the right tools to do it. Get Jira, Asana, Basecamp, whatever you need to make it easier. But once you're set up, what you need to do is, first thing is psychological safety. That's key. Your team need to be comfortable talking to you, sharing ideas. Okay. The second thing is that you need very clear goals. That's what I've said before. So your team your employees understand why, not just what they're doing. They can understand their tasks, that's easy, but they need to understand why they're doing it. What are the company's strategic goals? And then, as we've said before, you need to meet, and you need to meet regularly, right? A lot of companies that we meet now say they only meet once a month with their outsourced team, with their remote team. But well-structured, sort of well-planned meetings are essential for collaboration. They're needed to share ideas, to make sure everyone is on the same page. Well, we've talked about meetings a number of times before, but in our best performing teams at Secret Sauce, they meet at least once a day, and they have very, very high levels of psychological safety. They feel super safe in their teams. And finally, you need to celebrate successes. Okay, this is important. By celebrating individual achievements, by celebrating contributions from people in your team, you build confidence in the team, and you also build their psychological safety, so they'll want to collaborate more. Now, there are various ways you can do this. One of the ways we do is at the start of every sprint retrospective, which is every 2 weeks, where we review the work we've done over the last 2 weeks. We give an opportunity for everyone to give a high five to someone else in the team or to celebrate someone else's success. Okay, if you're interested in how different ways of doing this with remote teams, we wrote a blog post about it a couple of weeks ago, and you can find it on our website. There's lots of nice ideas. But how do you know you've succeeded? How do you know when your team is collaborated? What does it look like? Okay, so the first thing is they talk. Okay, they don't just follow instructions, say, yes, I'm doing this, I'm doing this. They will suggest ideas. They'll argue their point. Okay, they'll tell you your idea isn't such a great idea. They have psychological safety. The second thing is you will see that they understand your why. They understand why they're doing what. They will come up with ideas that you haven't thought of. And the third thing is they will celebrate people's successes, okay? Because they will be happy that the team is succeeding. Right, and next thing I want to talk about is how do you empower your remote team? Okay, so you followed our guidelines. Your team feels safe. They understand your goals. They're collaborating like they were sitting next to you. But how do you take that final step to empower them, to make them feel that they have true ownership of the work that they're doing? Right, this is more difficult remotely, okay? Remote workers, typically they feel more isolated than their in-office colleagues. It's just a characteristic of remote work. They don't go for drinks on a Friday. They don't understand the office in jokes. And there is a danger that if left unattended, that they won't feel as part of the company as someone who regularly goes to the office. Now, this is a danger, and it's something that you need to take into consideration. It's not a problem, but it's something you need to bear in mind, and you need to take deliberate, intentional actions to stop it happening. So the first thing is you need to make any remote worker, whether it's your employee, whether it's from another company, you need to make them feel part of your team. Okay, you need to treat remote workers exactly the same way as you do in office workers. Same benefits, same opportunities, same training. Interesting facts: statistically, remote workers have a less career growth within their company than in-house workers. That's just a fact. So you need to know that. You need to bear that in mind and make sure that doesn't happen in your company. Next thing is they need to understand your goals. So you need to intentionally explain your goals, your culture, your values to these remote, because things that sort of naturally diffuse in an office, the sort of culture of a company, it doesn't happen so easily with a remote team. So add your goals, your strategy to your onboarding, so they involve them in any company-wide meetings, and if possible, align their personal KPIs, their personal OKRs with the company's. And the final thing I want to talk about today is you need to trust your team. Okay, they need to be trusted, and they need to be given space to do their work. Don't micromanage them. Okay, many managers, many leaders of remote teams have real trouble with trust. How do I know they're working 8 hours a day? How do I know they're not out shopping when they're supposed to be working? How do I even know that they're working on my project and not for another company, freelancing? Okay, this is typical. This is normal. When you have these feelings of trust, you need to remember that you hired this person or you hired this team because you thought they could do their job. So you need to allow them to do their job. You need to give them the space to be able to own the work they're doing and not micromanage. It's really difficult. Trust me, it took me many years to nail this, but you mustn't micromanage them. However, having said that, remote workers can also feel really isolated. So you also shouldn't just abandon them. It's a fine balance between not abandoning them and not micromanaging them. So you need to give them the space that they need. You need to give them help when they need it. and they need to know that you're there if needed. Okay, but don't hover over them checking their work. Don't check their times. Don't make them log hours. Don't do stuff like it. Really erodes trust. And that's it. I'm going to hand over to Rachel now for the Q&A.
Okay. Thanks, Richard. That was great. Very helpful. Lots of tips and advice, lots of information. Okay, so yeah, we've got time now for a little Q&A. We've got some questions already in the chat, but if any of you have another question, feel free to add it and we'll try and get to it. So first, this is from Charlotte. Are there times when you absolutely need to have your team together in person, or do you think we can tackle everything remotely now?
Rachel, do you want to?
Yeah, so I mean, look, I think yes, it's absolutely possible to tackle everything remotely, especially if you implement all of the advice that we've given here. But I think, as we said earlier, if you can, meeting in person, even if it's just once a year or maybe twice a year, I think that is going to really help to build that foundation and build those personal relationships for working remotely. And I think the kinds of things that benefit from meeting in person are, planning meetings, strategy meetings where you need to be creative, think about ideas that maybe are going to take, longer than an hour. It's definitely better to be able to do those in person. Anything else, Richard, to add?
No, it really helps build that safety in the team.
Yeah, definitely. Okay, great. So we've got another one here. So we're currently in the process of defining better our internal communications. Do you have any suggestions on which points to put the most effort on? So they say some ideas we're considering are reducing interruptions, making more specific chats to reduce noise, defining a style to communicate between the team. So, I mean, this is something small, but it's something we changed a while ago. So we have lots of different channels in Slack, and we have one that's called General, which only admins can post into. So everyone in the company knows that if they see a message in that channel, it's going to be important information that they need to read and take seriously. And so that kind of reduces the noise and the chit chat, and that can go on in other channels. And I think, having a couple of extra topic specific channels can be helpful as well. So again, we have a channel for our developers to talk. It's called Dev Talk, and they can post things about code and chat GPT and whatever else. So that kind of keeps that conversation going as well. I don't know if it's something that you already do, but I think that having an all staff meeting or a whole team meeting at least once a month is really important as well. So again, that's where you can refer back to your longer term strategic goals, talk about what's been going well, celebrate successes in the team, and share a vision for the future as well.
Yeah.
Do you have anything to add, Richard?
Yeah, the only thing I'd like to say is, when I speak to a lot of companies moving to remote, they're all focused on productivity. How can we make our remote workers more productive? We need to reduce the amount of meetings. We need to remove the amount of interruptions so they can focus for get the full 8 hours while they're working at home. That's great, but humans are not machines. We do need some time for chit chat, for those things. So just bear that in mind when you're building it, when you're deciding your internal communication channel, that there is time for that, and it's okay for the team to do that. Otherwise, you could just feel like a task monkey just doing tasks all the time.
Yeah, and also I think it's important to emphasize, especially the kind of work that we do, which is knowledge work, it's creative, that collaboration is actually going to improve your results as well. You're going to get a better outcome when people can work together more effectively. So I think communication is really important. Okay, any other questions? Before we go, let's see, I got one here. What was it? No, I think that's it. Okay, so that's everything we've got time for today. Thank you everyone for coming. And if you enjoyed today's webinar, make sure you follow us on LinkedIn for more tips and advice on running effective teams. We'll be posting the recording of the webinar on LinkedIn over the next few days as well.
Cool.
And
So,
Richard.
yeah, sorry. And yeah, if you want to email me, there's my email address. Feel free to just contact me. Any questions? I love talking about this type of thing. And if you want to just book a meeting with me, yeah, I love talking about psychological safety. I love telling people what we've done over the years. My focus is the science of happiness, so I can also help you with improving happiness in your teams and things like that. So yeah, feel free to just book an appointment in my calendar. Okay, or just give me a shout on email. I'm also on LinkedIn. You can just find me on LinkedIn.
Okay, great. So thanks again, everyone, for coming. Have a great day, and we'll be posting this on LinkedIn soon.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye.